On her wedding night, a pregnant wife discovers her husband's affair with his mistress and leaves. The reflection staring back at Marjorie Whitlow in the antique mirror told a story of calculated perfection. Her dark brown hair was elegantly swept into an intricate updo, adorned with small white flowers that matched her custom-designed wedding dress. The 7-week-old secret growing inside her made her cheeks glow with a warmth that no makeup artist could replicate. At 31, she stood in the bridal suite of Raleigh's most prestigious country club, believing she had finally found her anchor in life. Trevor Langford was everything the South Carolina elite could dream of in a son-in-law. His carefully styled light brown hair, penetrating honey-colored eyes, and meticulously tailored suits spoke of old money and new ambitions. When he smiled, boardrooms yielded, and social circles parted like the Red Sea. His touch felt like security, his promises like gospel. 10 minutes until the reception speech, Mrs. Langford, the wedding coordinator, chirped through the door, making Marjorie's heart flutter at the new name she'd carry from this day forward. The February night air carried the scent of magnolias and expensive champagne through the halls of the venue. Marjorie's fingers absently smoothed the fabric over her still flat stomach, a gesture that had become reflexive since discovering her pregnancy. The baby was their secret, shared only in whispered excitement between sheets of Egyptian cotton 2 nights ago. Making her way through the dimly lit corridor, Marjorie caught fragments of laughter and clinking glasses from the grand ballroom below. Her heels clicked softly against the hardwood floors as she searched for Trevor, wanting a moment alone before their grand entrance as husband and wife. The master suite's door stood slightly ajar, golden light spilling onto the dark hallway carpet. Marjorie's hand reached for the handle, her wedding band catching the light, new and strange on her finger. But before her fingers could touch the brass, she heard it, a muffled laugh, feminine and familiar, followed by Trevor's low murmur. Time seemed to slow as Marjorie pushed the door open. The world narrowed to a singular frame. Trevor, his perfect suit jacket discarded, pressed against Bryn in the master bathroom, his hands tangled in her copper hair, mouth curved in that same smile that had won Marjorie's trust all those months ago. They didn't notice her immediately. Marjorie stood frozen, cataloging details with the sharp clarity of shock. Bryn's emerald bridesmaid dress hiked up her thighs, Trevor's custom platinum wedding band glinting as his fingers traced patterns on bare skin, the lipstick smeared across both their mouths, the same shade Marjorie had helped Bryn choose for the wedding party. No screams erupted, no crystal shattered, no dramatic confrontation worthy of the society pages unfolded. Instead, Marjorie stepped backward, her designer heels silent now on the plush carpet. Her hand found her stomach again, protective and instinctive. The corridor stretched before her like an escape route. Below, 300 guests waited to toast their future. Her father had spent a small fortune on the champagne alone. Her mother had hired the best wedding planner in 3 states. The gifts piled in the corner could furnish a small mansion. But Marjorie Whitlow, not Langford, never Langford, turned away from it all. She walked through the service entrance, past the kitchen where staff prepared to serve the 5-tier wedding cake, out into the parking lot where her overnight bag still sat in her car, packed for their honeymoon departure. The engine started quietly, a purr of German engineering. As she pulled away from the country club, Marjorie caught a final glimpse of the illuminated building in her rearview mirror. Inside, a perfect wedding awaited its bride, but she was already gone, driving north towards a future that looked nothing like the one she'd imagined when she'd woken up that morning. Her hand rested on her stomach, and for the first time since walking into that bathroom, she allowed herself to exhale. The air that left her lungs carried with it the weight of false promises and carefully constructed illusions. Ahead, through the windshield, the highway signs pointed toward Virginia, toward somewhere new, toward anywhere but here. Charlottesville emerged through the morning mist like a watercolor painting, its historic buildings and tree-lined streets offering an anonymous refuge. Marjorie's fingers cramped around the steering wheel as she pulled into the parking lot of the extended stay hotel she'd booked under her maiden name. 12 hours of driving had left her exhausted, but sleep felt like a luxury she couldn't afford, not while her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from a life she'd left behind. The hotel room was basic but clean, worlds away from the honeymoon suite at the Ritz-Carlton that should have been hers this morning. Marjorie methodically unpacked her overnight bag, hanging up the few casual clothes she'd packed for after the honeymoon. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd planned everything about the wedding down to the last detail, except for her escape. After a shower that couldn't quite wash away the memory of last night, Marjorie sat cross-legged on the bed, her laptop open before her. Her savings account balance glowed on the screen, enough to sustain her for a few months if she was careful. She'd worked as a project manager before the engagement, before Trevor had convinced her to quit and focus on their future. Now, that decision felt like another red flag she'd ignored. The local newspaper's classified section offered various job listings, but one caught her eye. Administrative assistant needed at Mountain View Veterinary Clinic. Immediate start. The position was entry-level, far below her qualifications on GR, but that was exactly what she needed. Something uncomplicated, something that wouldn't draw attention. The clinic sat on the outskirts of town, a modern single-story building with large windows and a well-maintained garden. Marjorie adjusted her loose cardigan, ensuring it fell naturally over her still flat stomach, and pushed open the glass door. The reception area smelled of antiseptic and pet shampoo, with soft classical music playing overhead. "Can I help you?" The receptionist, an older woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, looked up from her computer. "I'm here about the administrative assistant position," Marjorie said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I saw the ad in today's paper." "Oh, wonderful. I'm Ruth. Dr. Grant just fired our last temp for mixing up the scheduling system." "Let me grab him. He's between appointments." Before Marjorie could prepare herself, Ruth disappeared down a hallway and returned with a tall man in a white coat spotted with what looked like dog hair. Dr. Ellison Grant had the solid build of someone who regularly handled large animals, and his clean-shaven head caught the fluorescent lighting. But it was his eyes that caught Marjorie off guard, clear blue and quietly observant. They held none of the sharp calculation she'd grown accustomed to in Trevor's gaze. "You're interested in the position?" His voice was deep but gentle, matching his steady presence. "Yes, I have experience in office management and scheduling systems." Marjorie kept her answers professional, practiced. "I'm new to the area and looking for a fresh start." "Doctor." Grant studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Any experience with veterinary software?" "No, but I'm a quick learner." He nodded, then gestured toward his office. "Let's talk details." The interview was surprisingly straightforward. Dr. Grant asked practical questions about her organizational skills and ability to handle multiple tasks. He didn't press when she gave vague answers about her previous employment, and if he noticed her bare ring finger nervously folding the edge of her resume, he didn't mention it. "When can you start?" he asked finally. "Tomorrow," Marjorie answered, perhaps too quickly. 8 a.m. He stood, extending his hand. "Welcome to Mountain View." That evening, back in her hotel room, Marjorie allowed herself to breathe. She ordered room service, a simple soup and sandwich, and began looking for affordable apartments in the area. Her phone had finally fallen silent, its battery dead hours ago. She didn't plug it in. Instead, she opened her laptop and created a new email address, one that held no trace of the life she'd left behind. As she typed, her free hand rested on her stomach, a habit that was becoming more pronounced with each passing day. In the quiet of the room, she whispered a promise to her unborn child. "We're going to be okay." The words hung in the air, not quite convincing but necessary, like the first brush strokes of a new picture she was learning to paint. 3 weeks into her new job, Marjorie had established a routine that felt like armor. She arrived at the clinic precisely at 7:45 a.m., organized the day's appointments with military precision, and kept her interactions professional but distant. The loose cardigan she wore had become her uniform, carefully concealing the subtle changes in her body that only she could notice. That morning, she was updating patient records when a commotion at the front desk caught her attention. A young boy, perhaps 7 or 8, was pressed against his father's leg, hands covering his ears as a German shepherd barked nearby. The father, Dr. Grant, knelt beside him, speaking in low, steady tones. "It's okay, Nathan. Remember our breathing exercise, just like we practiced." Marjorie watched as Dr. Grant guided his son through what appeared to be a familiar ritual, his patience evident in every gentle movement. The boy's breathing slowly steadied, his rigid posture gradually relaxing. It was the first time she'd seen this side of her employer, not the confident veterinarian, but a father navigating his child's needs with quiet dedication. "I'm sorry, Doctor," Grant said later, stopping by her desk after settling Nathan in his office with headphones and a tablet. "Our usual sitter called in sick." School's out for teacher training. No need to apologize, Marjorie replied, keeping her eyes on the computer screen. The schedule's light today. He lingered, seemingly on the verge of saying more, but Marjorie maintained her focus on the screen. After a moment, he returned to his patients, leaving her to the comfortable isolation of spreadsheets and appointment reminders. During lunch, Marjorie sat in her car, carefully eating crackers that helped with the morning sickness. Her phone, her new phone with its empty contact list, buzzed with a news alert. Her stomach clenched as she read the headline. Southern Socialite's Wedding Day Disappearance. Family offers reward for information. The article painted a picture she barely recognized. Concerned family and friends, a devastated groom, speculation about mental health issues or cold feet. The comments section brimmed with theories, each more sensational than the last. None mentioned Trevor's infidelity. None questioned the perfect facade of the life she'd fled. A knock on her car window startled her. Ruth stood there, holding a ginger tea. Marjorie quickly locked her phone screen. "Thought you might need this," Ruth said as Marjorie rolled down the window. "Helps with morning sickness." Marjorie froze. Honey, I've had 3 kids, I know the signs." Ruth's smile was kind but knowing. "Don't worry. Your secret's safe with me." Before Marjorie could respond, Ruth had already turned back toward the clinic, leaving the tea on the car's windowsill. The warmth of the cup matched the heat rising in Marjorie's cheeks. Someone had seen through her careful disguise. That afternoon, while filing insurance claims, Marjorie overheard Nathan talking to his father in the break room. The boy's voice carried a distinctive pattern, his words precise and carefully chosen. "Dad, why does Miss Whitlow always eat lunch alone? Some people need quiet time to feel comfortable, buddy, like how you sometimes need your headphones. But doesn't she get lonely? Sometimes people carry invisible walls, Nathan. We have to respect them until they're ready to lower them themselves." The conversation hit too close to home. Marjorie found herself in the bathroom, breathing deeply, one hand pressed against her slightly swelling abdomen. In the mirror, she saw what others must see, a woman holding herself together with invisible strings, careful composure masking deeper tremors. When she returned to her desk, there was a small origami crane sitting on her keyboard. Next to it, a note in childish handwriting read, "Mom used to make these when she was sad. Maybe it will help you too." Marjorie stared at the paper crane, its wings delicately creased. For the first time since arriving in Charlottesville, she felt something crack in her carefully constructed walls. She slipped both the crane and the note into her purse, handling them as gently as the fragile hope they represented. That evening, instead of driving straight back to her newly rented apartment, Marjorie sat in the clinic's parking lot, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of possibility. The paper crane rested on her dashboard, its shadow stretching like an offering toward something she wasn't quite ready to name. It started with a certified letter. Marjorie recognized the law firm's prestigious letterhead before she even opened the envelope. Her fingers trembled slightly as she read the formal request for her to contact Trevor's attorneys regarding pressing matters of mutual concern. The morning sickness that had begun to fade returned with a vengeance. "Everything okay?" Dr. Grant's voice startled her. She hadn't heard him approach her desk. "Fine," she replied automatically, sliding the letter into her drawer. But her hands were folding a napkin from her lunch, creasing it over and over, a nervous habit she thought she'd conquered. "You know," he said, leaning against the doorframe of his office, "when Nathan's overwhelmed, we have this thing we do. We name 5 things we can see, 4 we can touch, 3 we can hear." "I'm not overwhelmed," Marjorie cut him off, perhaps too sharply. The hurt that flashed across his face made her regret her tone immediately. "Of course," his voice remained gentle, "just sharing a random fact." He turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, Nathan's been asking if you'd like to join us for pizza Friday. He's discovered origami animals on YouTube, thinks you might be interested." The invitation hung in the air between them. Marjorie's automatic response, a polite decline, died on her lips as she remembered the paper crane, still sitting on her bedside table at home. "I'll think about it," she said instead. Later that afternoon, while organizing patient files, Marjorie's new phone buzzed with an unknown number. Her heart stopped when she heard the familiar voice. "Marjorie, please don't hang up." Trevor's voice was smooth as ever, practiced in its concern. "Everyone's worried sick. Whatever's bothering you, we can work through it. The pregnancy hormones must be making you emotional." She ended the call, hands shaking. How did he know about the pregnancy? Who had told him? The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. She needed air. Outside, the April sun was deceptively bright. Marjorie found herself behind the clinic, in the small garden where they sometimes walked the recovering animals. She didn't realize Dr. Grant had followed her until he spoke. "My wife used to come out here too," he said quietly, maintaining a respectful distance. Said the lavender helped clear her head. Marjorie wanted to run, to maintain the careful distance she'd built, but her legs wouldn't move. "I didn't know you were married," she managed. "Anna." His voice carried a weight of memory. "She passed 3 years ago. Car accident. Nathan was 5. "I'm sorry," Marjorie whispered, and meant it. "She'd have liked you," he continued, surprising her. "She believed in giving people space to heal at their own pace. Said some scars need air to fade." The simple sincerity in his words cracked something in Marjorie's chest. "My scars are still bleeding," she admitted, the words escaping before she could catch them. "That's okay, too." He didn't move closer, didn't offer empty comfort, just stood there, solid and present, while Marjorie struggled to breathe through the panic Trevor's call had triggered. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Marjorie focused on her tasks with mechanical precision, but her mind kept returning to Trevor's words. He knew about the pregnancy. He had found her new number. The carefully constructed walls of her new life suddenly felt paper thin. As she was leaving that evening, Dr. Grant stopped her. "About Friday," he said. "Nathan's favorite is pepperoni. No pressure, but there's always extra. We start at 6. He handed her a business card with his address scribbled on the back. Marjorie stared at the card long after he'd left. In her other hand, she still clutched her phone. Trevor's called ID burned into her memory. 2 invitations. 2 very different futures. Back in her apartment, she placed Dr. Grant's card next to the paper crane. Outside her window, Charlottesville's evening traffic hummed, a gentle reminder that life continued to move forward, even when you felt stuck between worlds. Her hand found her growing bump, now noticeable enough that her largest cardigan was barely doing its job. "We're still okay," she whispered to her child, but this time the words carried a question mark she couldn't quite ignore. Friday evening found Marjorie sitting in her car outside Dr. Grant's house, debating whether to turn the key and drive away. The modest 2-story home with its well-tended garden seemed to mock her indecision. Through the front window, she could see Nathan arranging something on the coffee table, probably his origami supplies. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Trevor. She'd received 6 that day, each more manipulative than the last. The latest read, "Your parents are devastated. How could you be so selfish?" She turned the phone off and slipped it into her glove compartment. The walk to the front door felt like crossing an ocean. Before she could knock, Nathan opened it, his face lighting up with unexpected joy. "You came? Dad." Miss Whitlow came. His excitement was both warming and terrifying. Ellison appeared behind his son, wearing a faded flannel shirt and jeans instead of his usual clinic attire. "Nathan, remember what we discussed about personal space?" His gentle reminder caused the boy to step back, though his smile remained. "I brought salad," Marjorie said, holding up a bag from the grocery store. A peace offering, though she wasn't sure to whom. The inside of their home told a story of carefully managed chaos. Medical journals shared shelf space with children's books. A scheduling board on the wall tracked Nathan's routines in colorful detail. Everything had its place, but nothing felt rigid or cold. Unlike the museum-like perfection Trevor had always demanded. "Pizza's almost ready," Ellison said, leading her to the kitchen. "Nathan's been practicing his paper animals all week to show you." The kitchen island was scattered with origami paper in various stages of folding. Nathan immediately launched into a detailed explanation of his latest creation, a complex dragon that looked more like a crumpled mass of paper, but his enthusiasm was infectious. "Dad's not very good at folding," Nathan informed her matter-of-factly. "His fingers are too big." Ellison chuckled, removing the pizza from the oven. "I have other talents, like not burning dinner." Usually, the normalcy of the moment, the smell of melting cheese, Nathan's chatter, Ellison's self-deprecating humor, made something shift inside Marjorie's chest. When was the last time she'd experienced a dinner that wasn't scripted for social impact? As they ate, Nathan dominated the conversation with facts about origami and occasional observations about the clinic's animal patients. Ellison gently guided him when he became too intense, but never shut him down. Their dynamic was a dance of understanding and acceptance that made Marjorie's throat tight. "Miss Whitlow, why do you always wear big sweaters?" Nathan asked suddenly, with the direct curiosity of children. "Even when it's warm." Marjorie's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Ellison started to redirect his son, but she found herself speaking. "I'm going to have a baby," she said softly, surprising herself with the admission. Nathan's eyes widened. "Really? When? Will they like origami too? Dad, can we teach the baby origami?" "Nathan," Ellison's voice carried a gentle warning, but Marjorie felt an unexpected laugh bubble up. "I don't know if babies can learn origami right away," she said, "but maybe someday." The conversation shifted naturally to other topics, but something had changed. The wall Marjorie had built began to show its first real cracks. After dinner, while Nathan showed her his origami book collection, Ellison cleaned up in the kitchen. Through the doorway, Marjorie watched him move with the same quiet efficiency he showed at the clinic. He caught her looking and offered a small smile that asked nothing in return. When it was time to leave, Nathan insisted on giving her one of his paper creatures, a lopsided but carefully folded cat. "For the baby," he said seriously. "Cats are good luck." In her car, Marjorie placed the paper cat next to the crane on her dashboard. Her phone remained in the glove compartment, Trevor's messages unread. For the first time in months, she felt something that resembled peace, fragile as a paper wing, but present. The night air carried the scent of spring flowers as she drove home, so different from the heavy magnolia perfume of her wedding night. Her hand rested on her growing belly, and this time when she whispered, "We're okay," it felt less like a question and more like a possibility. The morning started like any other until Ruth burst into the clinic, her usually calm demeanor shattered. "Marjorie, dear, you need to see this." She thrust her tablet forward, displaying the local news website. The headline made Marjorie's blood run cold. "Prominent businessman Trevor Langford files for custody of unborn child." The article detailed Trevor's claims, his concern for the well-being of his child, allegations of Marjorie's mental instability, and his intention to protect his parental rights. The comments section buzzed with speculation, judgment, and amateur psychological analyses of her disappearance. Marjorie's hands trembled as she read, her carefully constructed new life suddenly feeling as fragile as the origami creatures decorating her desk. The sound of approaching footsteps made her quickly close the browser, but not before Ellison had glimpsed the headline over her shoulder. "My office," he said quietly. Now, following him felt like walking through molasses. Nathan sat in the corner of Ellison's office with his headphones on, absorbed in his tablet. It must have been another school holiday. Ellison closed the door and leaned against his desk, his expression concerned, but not pitying. "How much trouble are you in?" he asked directly. Marjorie's throat tightened. "I'm not," she started, but the lie died on her lips. "I don't know. Does he have any legal right to the baby? We were married when—" She swallowed hard. "The ceremony was complete. Legally, he's the father." Ellison nodded slowly. Processing. "Do you have a lawyer?" "I can't afford one. Not the kind I'd need to fight him." The truth of those words hit her like a physical blow. Trevor had connections, resources, an army of attorneys. She had a part-time salary and dwindling savings. "I know someone," Ellison said, reaching for his phone. "My sister-in-law. She's a family court attorney in Richmond. Brilliant and ruthless when she needs to be. I can't accept—" "You can, and you will," he cut her off, his voice firm, but kind. "Anna would never forgive me if I didn't help." The mention of his late wife hung in the air between them. Nathan looked up briefly at her name, then returned to his game, though his shoulders had tensed slightly. "Why?" Marjorie asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why help me? You don't even know what I did, why I left." Ellison's eyes met hers, clear and steady. "I know enough. I know you work hard. You're kind to our patients, and you make my son feel heard. I know you fold napkins when you're anxious and touch your stomach when you think no one's looking. I know you're fighting for something important." He paused. "The rest is your story to tell when and if you choose." A sob caught in Marjorie's throat. Nathan immediately removed his headphones, distressed by the sound. To her surprise, he approached and carefully placed his origami book in her lap. "When I'm sad, making birds helps," he said seriously. "Dad says it's because you have to focus on something outside your head. The simple wisdom of his words broke something loose in Marjorie's chest. Through tears, she began to speak. The words poured out. The wedding night discovery, Trevor's betrayal with Bryn, her escape, the weeks of hiding and fear. Nathan returned to his corner but kept watching, his eyes wide and concerned. When she finished, Ellison remained quiet for a moment. He knows you're here. He must. The article mentioned Charlottesville. Fresh panic seized her. I should leave. Find somewhere else. No. Ellison's voice was firm. Running gives him power. You stay. We fight. He held up his phone. Let me call Caroline. She'll know what to do. As he dialed, Marjorie felt something shift inside her. Not just the baby moving, but something in her spirit. The paper crane on her desk caught the morning light, casting a shadow that looked almost like wings spread in defiance. Nathan silently offered her a piece of origami paper, bright blue and full of possibility. Her fingers began folding, muscle memory from watching him practice taking over. With each crease, her breathing steadied. She wasn't alone anymore. For better or worse, she had found people willing to stand beside her in the coming storm. Caroline Grant Mitchell swept into the clinic like a force of nature, her tailored suit and sharp eyes a stark contrast to her brother-in-law's casual demeanor. She carried an air of quiet authority that reminded Marjorie of the power players she'd left behind in Raleigh. But there was something different here, an authenticity that Trevor's world had always lacked. So, Caroline said, settling into Ellison's office after hours, tell me everything. And I mean everything, Marjorie. I need to know what we're up against. The next 2 hours were a methodical dissection of Marjorie's marriage, the prenuptial agreement she'd signed, and every detail of that fateful wedding night. Caroline took notes in precise handwriting, occasionally asking clarifying questions that cut straight to the heart of matters Marjorie hadn't even considered. The timing works in our favor, Caroline finally said, reviewing her notes. The marriage was technically valid, but given the circumstances of consummation, or rather the lack thereof, and the immediate separation, we have grounds to challenge any claims he makes. But the baby is your primary concern, yes. Caroline's expression softened slightly. And that's exactly what will help us. His actions, the public announcement, the media circus, the attempt to paint you as unstable, they all demonstrate a pattern of control and manipulation, not genuine concern for the child's welfare. Thunder rumbled outside, matching the stormy expression on Caroline's face as she continued. His biggest mistake was going public. No judge looks kindly on a father who takes a custody battle to the tabloids before the child is even born. He's trying to smoke me out, Marjorie realized. Force me to come back. Precisely. And we're not going to let him succeed. Caroline pulled out a business card. I have a colleague here in Charlottesville, a private investigator I trust. We need to document everything. Every call, every text, every article. Build our case while he's busy building his media narrative. Lightning flashed outside the window, illuminating Nathan's origami creatures lined up on Ellison's windowsill. He'd insisted on leaving them there, for protection, after overhearing parts of their earlier conversations. There's something else, Marjorie said quietly. Bryn, the woman I found him with, she wasn't just any ex-partner. She was involved in his investment firm. I overheard things during our engagement, conversations that didn't make sense at the time. Caroline's eyebrows rose. Financial irregularities? Maybe. I never saw documents, but Marjorie twisted her hands in her lap. The night before the wedding, I heard them arguing about moving funds before the quarter's audit. Now that, Caroline smiled for the first time, that's something we can work with. Trevor Langford's reputation is his weapon. Let's see how he likes having it questioned. The rain was falling in sheets now, drumming against the clinic's roof. Ellison appeared in the doorway with coffee, herbal tea for Marjorie, and a concerned expression. You should stay tonight, he said, looking at the storm. Both of you. The guest room's made up, and Nathan's already excited about making breakfast. Marjorie started to protest, but Caroline cut her off. He's right. We have more to discuss, and I don't like the idea of you driving in this weather. Besides, she added with a knowing look, isolation is your enemy right now. Trust me on this. Later that night, lying in the Grant's guest room, Marjorie listened to the storm rage outside. Down the hall, she could hear Nathan's muffled voice as Ellison read him a bedtime story. The normalcy of the sound brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Her phone lit up with another message from Trevor. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Come home. We can fix this. For the first time, his words didn't trigger panic. Instead, she felt something new rising in her chest. Determination, maybe even anger. She took a photo of the message and forwarded it to Caroline, just as they'd discussed. Evidence, ammunition, protection. Her hand rested on her growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement that had become more distinct lately. "We're not going back," she whispered. "We're going forward." Outside, the storm began to ease, but Marjorie knew this was just the calm before a different kind of tempest. The moment Marjorie had been dreading arrived on a sunny Tuesday morning. She was organizing files at her desk when Trevor's expensive cologne announced his presence before she even looked up. He stood in the clinic's waiting room, immaculate in a tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Hello, darling," he said, his voice carrying that familiar blend of charm and control. "You're looking different." His eyes lingered on her now visible pregnancy, poorly concealed by her cardigan. The waiting room fell silent. Even the animals seemed to sense the tension. Ruth's hand hovered over the phone, ready to call Ellison, who was out on a farm call. "This is a place of business," Marjorie said, proud of how steady her voice remained. "You need to leave." "Actually," Trevor smiled, pulling out a document, "I have an appointment. Not with a veterinarian, of course, but with my wife. My lawyer insisted we try talking before the hearing next week." Marjorie's hands started to fold the edge of a nearby paper, but she forced them still. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her nervous tells. "Anything you have to say can go through Caroline." "Caroline Grant Mitchell?" Trevor's smile tightened. "Yes, I've heard of her. Quite the pit bull, from what I understand. But really, Marjorie, a small-town lawyer against my team. Be reasonable." "Mr. Langford," Ruth's voice cut through the tension. "I've already called the police. This is private property." Trevor's facade cracked slightly. "The police? Come now. I'm having a conversation with my wife about our child." "Surely that's not ex-wife," Marjorie corrected, standing up. Her growing belly was fully visible now, and she no longer tried to hide it. "Caroline filed the papers last week. You should have received them by now." "This is ridiculous." Trevor's voice lost its smooth edge. "You're embarrassing yourself, working in this place, playing house with the local widower and his broken kid. That's beneath you." The mention of Ellison and Nathan sparked something in Marjorie that overwhelmed her fear. "Don't you dare," she said, her voice low but fierce. "Don't you dare speak about them." "Oh, hit a nerve, did I?" Trevor stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think I don't know about your little dinners? The origami sessions? It's pathetic, Marjorie. You're trying to build a fantasy life when you have real responsibilities back home." "The only fantasy," Marjorie replied, "was believing you were capable of actual love. Tell me, does Bryn know about the offshore accounts? Or was she just a distraction while you moved the money?" Trevor's face went pale. In that moment, Marjorie saw him clearly. Not the powerful man she'd feared, but someone desperate to maintain control. "You don't know what you're talking about," he hissed. "Don't I? Caroline's been very thorough in her investigation. Amazing what people will tell you when they realize the ship is sinking." The sound of police sirens grew closer. Trevor straightened his tie, composure slipping back into place like a well-worn mask. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Actually, it is." Ellison's voice came from the doorway. He must have returned from his farm call. He stood there, still in his work clothes, but his presence filled the room. "Your court summons isn't just about the divorce anymore. The SEC is very interested in some of the information Caroline uncovered." Trevor's mask cracked completely. "You think you can threaten me? Do you know who I am?" "Yes," Marjorie said quietly. "We know exactly who you are. That's the problem, isn't it?" The police arrived then, 2 officers treating the situation with professional courtesy, but firm insistence that Trevor leave. Through the window, Marjorie watched him get into his luxury car, his movements stiff with suppressed rage. When he was gone, her legs finally gave out. Ellison was there immediately, guiding her to a chair. Ruth appeared with water and a damp cloth for her face. "You did good," Ellison said softly. "Really good. I was terrified," she admitted. "Being brave isn't about not being scared," he replied. "It's about standing your ground anyway." Marjorie looked around the clinic, at Ruth's concerned face, at the familiar walls that had become her sanctuary, at Ellison's steady presence beside her. For the first time, she truly believed she could win this fight. Nathan's origami dragons, she said suddenly, remembering the paper creatures on her desk. They really do offer protection. The courthouse loomed before Marjorie like a mountain she had to climb. Caroline walked beside her, briefcase in hand, while Ellison and Nathan waited on a nearby bench. The boy was focused intently on folding a new origami creation, his way of managing the tension of the day. "Well, remember," Caroline said, adjusting her blazer, "let them show their cards first. Trevor's team doesn't know how much evidence we have about the financial irregularities. They'll try to paint this as a domestic dispute, but we're playing a different game entirely." Inside the courtroom, Trevor sat with his attorneys, his usual polished appearance slightly frayed at the edges. The past week had seen a steady stream of news articles about potential investigations into his investment firm. Former clients had begun asking questions, and rumors of federal involvement swirled through financial circles. Judge Catherine Monroe, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, surveyed the room with sharp eyes. "Before we begin these proceedings, I want to address the unusual nature of this case. Mr. Langford, your public statements about this matter have been noted with some concern." Trevor's lead attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client's actions were driven by genuine concern for his unborn child's welfare." "Really?" Caroline rose smoothly. "We have documentation of 27 media appearances, 3 press releases, and multiple social media campaigns designed to pressure my client. This isn't concern of Your Honor. This is harassment." The next hour was a carefully orchestrated dance of legal arguments. Trevor's team presented their case for custody, citing Marjorie's unstable behavior and flight risk status. Each accusation felt like a physical blow, but Marjorie kept her face composed, remembering Ellison's words about bravery. Then Caroline began her counter-presentation. "Your Honor, we'd like to enter into evidence documentation of financial transactions made by Mr. Langford in the weeks preceding and following my client's departure." Trevor's attorney jumped up. "Objection. This custody hearing isn't the venue for financial matters." "On the contrary," Caroline replied calmly, "these documents demonstrate a pattern of behavior directly relevant to Mr. Langford's fitness as a parent. Specifically, his history of using financial control as a means of manipulation." Judge Monroe reviewed the papers with growing concern. "Mr. Langford, would you care to explain these transactions?" Trevor stood, his composure cracking. "This is ridiculous. She's trying to deflect from her own actions. She abandoned our marriage, disappeared without a word. After finding you with another woman on our wedding night," Marjorie spoke for the first time, her voice clear and steady, "in the same bathroom where you'd kissed me an hour earlier and talked about our future." The courtroom fell silent. Trevor's face flushed red. "That's not, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Marjorie continued, strength flowing through her words. "I understand that you never saw me as a person. I was an accessory, a prop in the perfect life you were building. Just like this baby is just another piece of your public image." "Mrs. Langford," the judge began. "Ms. Whitlow," Marjorie corrected gently. "I'd like to return to my name, Your Honor, and I'd like to tell you about the life I've built in Charlottesville, about the people who showed me what real support looks like, about why I know my child will be safer, happier, and better loved far away from Trevor's manipulations." Through the courtroom windows, sunlight caught the edge of something on the bench outside. Nathan's latest origami creation, held up against the glass. A phoenix, rising with spread wings. Judge Monroe spent several minutes reviewing the documents before her. When she looked up, her expression was resolute. "Given the evidence presented, particularly regarding Mr. Langford's apparent financial improprieties and pattern of coercive behavior, I'm granting the divorce petition and awarding full custody of the unborn child to Ms. Whitlow, pending the completion of federal investigations into Mr. Langford's business dealings." Trevor's outburst was immediate and explosive, requiring the bailiff's intervention, but Marjorie barely heard it. She was looking through the window at Ellison and Nathan, who had created a small army of paper creatures during the proceedings. Guardians, Nathan had called them. Protectors. As she left the courtroom, Caroline squeezed her arm. "It's not completely over. There will be more hearings about the financial aspects, but the hardest part, that's done." Marjorie nodded, one hand resting on her belly where her child moved restlessly. "We're free," she whispered, and for the first time since that wedding night, the words held no trace of doubt. 3 months after the courthouse victory, Marjorie sat in the clinic's garden, watching Nathan teach origami to a small group of children from his support group. Her daughter, Lucy, slept peacefully in her carrier nearby, tiny fingers curled around a miniature paper crane. The headlines about Trevor had faded into business sections now, details of federal indictments, seized assets, and cooperative witnesses. Bryn had eventually turned state's evidence, revealing the full scope of his financial schemes. The man who had once seemed so powerful was now reduced to newspaper headlines and cautionary tales. "He's really good with them," Ellison said, joining her on the bench. He nodded toward Nathan, who was patiently showing a younger child how to make precise folds. Having the support group meet here was a great idea. "He's the one who suggested it," Marjorie replied, smiling as she watched Nathan's confident instructions. "Said folding helps quiet his mind. Thought it might help other kids too." The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and new beginnings. The clinic had expanded, adding a community space where support groups could meet. Ruth had finally hired another receptionist to help manage the growing practice, though she still insisted on working full shifts to keep an eye on things. Lucy stirred in her carrier, and Marjorie lifted her out, cradling her close. The baby's eyes, already showing hints of green like her mother's, blinked sleepily at the world around her. On her nursery wall at home hung the first crane Marjorie had received, a guardian watching over new dreams. "The house on Maple Street is still for sale," Ellison said casually, his eyes on Nathan. "The one with the big backyard and the window seat you liked." Marjorie's heart skipped. They'd been dancing around this conversation for weeks, ever since he'd first suggested she and Lucy might want a more permanent home than her apartment. "It's a big step," she said softly. "Life is full of those." He turned to face her, his blue eyes serious but gentle. "Sometimes, they're worth taking." Before she could respond, Nathan came running over, excitement radiating from his face. "Look what we made." He held up a string of connected paper cranes, each one a different color. Everyone helped. "It's a family." The word hung in the air between them, full of possibility. Marjorie looked at Nathan's proud face, at Ellison's steady presence beside her, at Lucy sleeping peacefully in her arms. Family. Not the perfectly curated image Trevor had demanded, but something real, something built on understanding, patience, and genuine love. "The house has good light," she said finally, looking at Ellison, "for origami practice." His smile was like sunrise. "Nathan's room could be next to the garden, and Lucy's across the hall," Nathan added, clearly having thought this through, "so she can see the birds in the morning." Marjorie felt tears threaten, happy ones, the kind that came more easily these days. Her hand found Ellison's, threading their fingers together as naturally as folding paper. A year ago, she had driven away from a life built on illusions, carrying nothing but broken dreams and fragile hope. Now she sat in a garden full of paper creatures and real love, holding her daughter, surrounded by people who saw her true self and cherished it. "Yes," she said simply, squeezing Ellison's hand. "The house on Maple Street sounds perfect." Nathan cheered and immediately began planning where all his origami supplies would go. Lucy woke fully, gurgling at her brother's excitement. Ellison's thumb traced circles on Marjorie's palm, a gesture of quiet joy. Later that evening, after Nathan had gone to bed and Lucy was sleeping soundly in her portable crib, Marjorie stood in the Grandson kitchen. Through the window, she could see the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. The paper crane mobile Nathan had made for Lucy turned gently in the breeze, casting dancing shadows on the wall. She touched her throat, realizing the familiar knot of anxiety that had lived there for so long was gone. In its place was something lighter, stronger, like wings unfolding, ready to soar. "We made it," she whispered to her sleeping daughter. "We're more than okay. We're home." Outside, autumn leaves danced in the wind, carrying the last whispers of summer away. But Marjorie wasn't watching them go. Her eyes were fixed on the future, bright and beautiful as 1,000 paper cranes taking flight. 5 years later, the house on Maple Street buzzed with the controlled chaos of a weekend morning. Colorful paper cranes hung from every window, catching the early spring sunlight and casting rainbow shadows across the hardwood floors. Lucy, now a precocious 5-year-old with her mother's observant eyes and determination, sat at the kitchen table carefully folding a piece of purple paper. "Like this, Luce." Nathan, now 13, leaned over to help his sister perfect her crane's wing. His patience with her had become legendary in the family. especially when it came to origami lessons. The formerly anxious boy had grown into a confident teenager who found his voice through teaching others the art of paper folding. Almost got it. Lucy's tongue stuck out in concentration, her dark curls falling into her eyes. "Hey, Daddy, look!" Ellison paused in making pancakes to admire his daughter's creation. The word Daddy still made his heart swell, even after all these years. He remembered the day Lucy first called him that, shortly after the small, intimate wedding ceremony they'd held in this very backyard, where paper cranes had served as both decorations and symbols of their journey. Marjorie entered the kitchen, carrying a stack of flyers for the clinic's newest initiative, a weekly support group for children dealing with family transitions. The origami therapy program Nathan had started had grown into something bigger than any of them had imagined, attracting families from all over Virginia. Trevor's name occasionally still appeared in the news, usually in connection with his prison sentence or the ongoing process of repaying his defrauded investors. But those stories felt like echoes from another life, one that grew fainter with each passing day. The man who had once dominated Marjorie's world had become nothing more than a distant memory, as insubstantial as smoke. "Mom," Lucy called out, holding up her slightly crooked but lovingly made crane. "This one's for your office." Marjorie took the paper bird, adding it to the collection that lined her desk at the clinic, a daily reminder of how far they'd come, of the family they'd built not from obligation or appearance, but from choice and love. "Perfect timing," she smiled, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "I was just thinking our family of cranes needed a new member." Outside, through the kitchen window, spring flowers bloomed in the garden where Nathan's support group would meet later that day. Paper cranes danced in the morning breeze, their shadows playing across the grass, not just decorations, but markers of a journey, testaments to the power of transformation and the strength of starting over. They were all learning still, growing together, folding new dreams into reality one day at a time. And that, Marjorie knew, was the most beautiful shape love could take. The end. At what point did you realize that you needed to free yourself from a relationship that seemed perfect on the outside, but was destroying you on the inside? Like Marjorie, who faced the fear of society's judgment in order to protect her true essence. Have you ever had to choose between keeping up appearances or saving your own soul? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please leave a like to help me out, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next stories. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.